Once upon a time, in a world long ago, there lived a sweet little girl named Hayal. She lived happily with her family in a small town. Her greatest passion was fairy tales. Every night her mother would tell her stories, and Hayal would get lost in them, imagining herself as the hero of each tale. One day, while her mother was telling her a story, an idea popped into Hayal's head. "Why don't I write my own fairy tale?" she thought. Excited by the thought, Hayal quickly sprang into action. She went to her room, sat at her desk, and took out her favorite colorful pens and her sparkling notebook. How does a fairy tale begin, she wondered. She decided to start the way her mother always did. Once upon a time. But Hayal didn't want her story to be an ordinary one. She wanted it to have magic, adventure, and a bit of mystery. She thought, and finally, she began to write. Once upon a time, Hayal began, there was a magical forest called Rainbow Forest. In this forest, everything was colorful. The trees stretched up to the sky, and their leaves were golden. The flowers glowed with light. In the depths of this forest lived a girl who could write fairy tales. Her name was also Hayal. Every morning she would wander through the forest, gathering inspiration, and she would add this magical forest to her stories, making them even more beautiful. As Hayal described the heroine wandering through the forest, she wanted to give her a task. But what should that task be? As she pondered, a bright idea came to her. In her story, one day while wandering through the forest, Hayal saw a beam of light. This light came from a butterfly's wings. The butterfly flew towards Hayal and told her something very important. "Hayal, there is a great power within you. With this power, you can write wonderful stories. But first, you must go to the castle in the sky and find the magic pen there. Every story you write with this pen will come true." Hayal was filled with excitement upon hearing the butterfly's words. She immediately set off on her journey, and the butterfly led her to the castle. The castle hung in the sky, suspended on the clouds. As she wondered how she would reach the castle, the butterfly gave her golden dust. This dust sprinkled under her feet, and suddenly a staircase made of clouds appeared. As Hayal climbed the stairs, her heart raced, but she was also full of excitement. When she reached the castle door, she found a large golden key. She took the key, opened the door, and entered a magnificent hall. The ceiling of the hall was covered with stars, and each star smiled at Hayal. In the center of the hall stood a shining chest. When Hayal opened the chest, she found many sparkling jewels, but the most striking of all was a magic pen inside the chest. The pen glowed with light and scattered rainbow colors around it. When Hayal picked up the pen, she heard it whisper to her, "I am a pen that only those who carry the love of stories in their hearts can use. Every story you write with me will enrich the imaginations of children." Upon hearing the pen's words, Hayal felt overjoyed and immediately began to write. With every stroke of the pen, the words on her notebook seemed to come to life. Hayal created a world where animals, flowers, and even stones in the forest could talk. In this world, everyone helped one another, formed friendships, and embarked on adventures together. With every sentence she wrote, Hayal felt stronger. She knew now that her stories weren't just words on a page. They were real, living tales that could be experienced. When Hayal finished writing her story, she looked at her notebook and realized that what she had written wasn't just a story. It was a reflection of her own inner world. As she read her story, she felt joy in every sentence, and that joy brought a big smile to her face. At the end of her story, Hayal added a wish. I hope that everyone who reads this story embarks on a journey within their own imagination and carries the love of stories in their heart forever. When Hayal read her story to her mother was overjoyed and said, "This is the most beautiful story I've ever heard." Hayal was thrilled and decided to write a new story every day. Each story she wrote allowed her to discover new worlds, and Hayal lived countless adventures in those worlds. And so, the tale of Hayal's magic pen came to an end. But Hayal's adventures and the stories she wrote never did. Every day she wrote a new tale, and each story filled the imaginations of other children with color. And as everyone read Hayal's stories, they set off on new adventures in their own imaginations.